Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. If you need any technical assistance, excuse me, you can press the I need help button or chat us. Again, thanks for joining. My name is Danetta Harris. I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. Thanks for coming to our fourth alternate entry meeting for the Dallas Love Field Airport. If you do have questions tonight, you can chat us for any technical assistance, as well as you can ask questions in the Q&A mode, which will be following our presentation tonight. And you can just put them in the chat. If you want them to go to Q&A, you can click the blue question mark button. And if you just want to chat us, you can click the gray chat or what kind of looks like a text button to chat with us for any technical questions. If you do have questions, some of them may have already been answered on our frequently asked questions document, and that's located on our project webpage under the Airport Info Airport Projects for the alternate entry project, as well as if you click on the upper right-hand corner where it says event board, you can download those frequently asked questions now, as well as our presentation and survey flyer information. So without further ado, would like to again welcome you to tonight's presentation. Our speaker for tonight is going to be Aro Manjumdar, who is one of the senior program managers for the Dallas Love Field Airport. Aro, are you ready to present this evening?
Thank you, Danetta. And welcome everybody to our fourth Dallas Love Field Alternate Entry Analysis meeting. This is the fourth in a series of meetings that we've had this month and last month. So this is our meeting agenda today. I'll discuss our meeting purpose, the need for an alternate entry, the alternatives that we've looked at, and some preliminary evaluations that we've done. Based on those evaluations, we've shortlisted 5 alternatives. I'll also talk a little bit about the public input survey that's been going on for the last 3 months. And if you haven't taken the survey, please do so. You'll find the link on this presentation as well as on our website. It's going to be open till October 31st. So if you have friends and family who want to take the survey, please spread the word. And then we'll discuss some of the, what our next steps are and the frequently asked questions. So what's the purpose of this meeting? Basically, it's a public information meeting, and we will be providing you information about what we've done so far, what's our thought process behind this effort, share updates with you, and the most important is gather community feedback, because we are looking for active feedback from our community, from our commuters, from our passengers, and everybody that's affected by what Love Field does. So a little bit about why we've started this process. What was the need? Why do we need an alternate entry? And we get this question a lot, especially now during the pandemic, when traffic volumes are low, our passenger volumes are lower. We're only operating at 25 to 30% of our pre-COVID capacity. So just a little bit of history. We right now, Love Field only has one entrance, which is at the far south end of the airport on a very busy street. Mockingbird Lane has over 52,000 cars a day. And the intersection of Mockingbird, Herb Kelleher Way, and Cedar Springs Road has over 80,000 cars a day. That's a huge volume. And the only entry to Love Field, which is the busiest, medium-sized airport in all of North America. So it's medium hub airports are the medium hub airports carry between 15 and 25 million passengers a year, and we're the busiest of all of them. So a busy airport, very busy intersection as the only entry point to the airport is not a good combination. And we know that that intersection, Mockingbird and Hercules Way, frequently slips to level of service F, which is intersection failure during peak hours. And this was all, and that's during normal operations. If we have incidents or lane closures for construction or any other reason, long backups occur. Mockingbird backs up both ways past Denton and then on the east side up to Lemon Avenue and around Airdrome. So we have an issue there. And whenever we have backups like that, emergency vehicles cannot respond in time to get to the airport. Passengers are impacted because they might miss their flights. And so that is an issue. And if an incident blocks the entrance, there's no way to get into the airport for general public and even most first responders. So that's what started this process of the alternate entry. So we are doing the study. It started off as a traffic issue, how to mitigate the conditions at Mockingbird and Hercules Way intersection. But since then, it's evolved to look at a holistic analysis, which includes safety, of course, mobility and congestion, security concerns arising out of the situation that we have, and operational risk to the airport. So that's what we've been looking at on the alternate entry analysis. So a little bit of background. When the Wright Amendment was repealed or sunset in 2014, we were expecting an increase in traffic at Love Field. And so we did a master plan update to look at the various facilities and impacts that the repeal of the sunset of Wright Amendment would have. And that study back then with 2013 volumes and which was completed in 2015, recommended that this intersection be improved. So at that time, they were only looking at various improvements along Mockingbird, and extensive studies were done, and there was a recommendation to grade separate Mockingbird and Hercules Way, Cedar Spring Road intersection. It's called the Diverging Diamond Interchange. So of the various options studied, that was the option that was recommended for implementation. When we went to implement the recommendations, to start looking at the feasibility of grade separating Mockingbird and the Hercules Way and Cedar Springs Road, and back in 2018, we realized that the traffic volumes on Mockingbird Lane had increased rapidly and had gone past the projections. And at the same time, passenger volumes at the airport at Love Field had also increased at a much faster pace than what we had anticipated. We started realizing that there was no way we could actually close that intersection of Mockingbird Lane and Cedar Spring Road to grade separate the intersection while still maintaining operations of the airport at a acceptable level. I mean, there was just no way of accommodating the increased traffic on Mockingbird as well as the increased traffic to the airport. So that's when we started looking at an alternate entry option. There were some incidents where which impacted access to the airport, and EMS and first responders were delayed by 20 minutes. We've also had quite frequently when we've had events where we had to close a lane or even for construction, either on Harkeller Way or Mockingbird, we had long backups, both on Mockingbird and also on Harkeller Way. So it was pretty obvious to us that we needed to plan to address this issue. Realize though that realizing too that we had indeed reached our maximum passenger capacity at the airport, and before COVID-19 hit, our economic activity was increasing. We were having increasingly more businesses, and with that comes increased number of vehicles on our roads. So we were fully anticipating the volumes on Mockingbird as well as at Love Field to keep growing. And that's when we decided we really needed to look at an alternate entry point, because there was no good feasible way to work at the intersection of Mockingbird and Harkeller Way, grade separated, and make it all work. So that's where we are today. Back in 2018, we looked at a north entry, which would go with a bridge over Bachman Lake, touching down on Northwest Highway. And we took that option to council, the Transportation Committee of the City Council. And City Council, the Transportation Committee asked us to go back and take a look at some more options. So we came back with 12 different options, 12 different alternatives, and a no bill alternative. So 11 alternatives, including and no bill alternative. So you're looking at these alternatives because of the changed traffic volumes, increased traffic volumes. We took another look at the 5 options that were on the south side and ran traffic analysis based on new numbers. And then we added 6 more entry points to analyze. Number 11 here, where my cursor is an entry off of Denton. Number 8, 9, and 10 are various entry points off of Shorecrest. Number 7 is the same option that we had presented to council, which is an entry off of Northwest Highway. And number 10 here is an entry off of Lemon Avenue via George Cooper Circle. So we reanalyzed the 5 options that we initially started with, and then looked at 6 more options. That's what we studied at a very high level. So the criteria that we used for analysis was definitely traffic impacts. That's what started this whole analysis. But together with traffic impacts, we wanted to look at environmental benefits. If we did the project, what kind of environmental benefits would it have? So one of the key measures that help us with environmental quality, air quality, is reduction in vehicle miles traveled. So if you reduce vehicle miles traveled, you reduce emissions. And with reduced emissions help our air quality. So that's why we wanted to make sure any option that we exercise has a net benefit in terms of vehicle miles traveled. Then the third criteria was ability to accommodate an automated people mover system. This was a direction from the Transportation Committee, the Council Committee, that we should look at options, we should only move forward options that can realistically accommodate an automated people mover system in the future. And of course, last but not the least, provides an alternate route to emergency needs. So in case of an incident which blocks our Way and Mockingbird Road, we want to be able to access the airport, access the terminal, and evacuate people if necessary. If there's some kind of emergency, be able to respond in a timely fashion. So those were our 4 key bullet points which we have based our analysis on. So the following, the alternates 1 to 3, I'll go over the ones that we looked at and we decided not to move forward with. So alternates 1 to 3, they're all on the south side of the airport along Mockingbird Way. And if you have Mockingbird Lane, and if you see the analysis based on our criteria that I just described, there's critical impacts. None of these options reduce VMT. None of these can integrate an automated people mover system. And none of them really can give us an additional entry point that's accessible when Mockingbird and Hercules Way is blocked. Because remember, if there's an incident at Mockingbird and Hercules Way, if we create an alternate entry anywhere between Lemon Avenue and Hercules Way on Mockingbird, chances are very high that you will not be able to access it because traffic will be backed up. So it wasn't a very reliable option to have another entry point on Mockingbird for the airport. Alternate 4 was a U-turn at Airdrome. Same issue, because it really makes traffic worse. It actually increases vehicle miles traveled, still doesn't integrate an APM system, which is the automated people mover system, and still doesn't address our emergency needs. Same thing for 5, which is an entry point on Waddell Avenue along Mockingbird. Same disadvantages, same issues. So we rejected these 5 alternates. And then moving on to alternate 11. Alternate 11, which is the entry off of Denton, it had some VMT reductions, not as high as the other options, but positive VMT reduction. And it did provide a good alternate entry point in case of emergencies, but it failed critical criteria of being able to accommodate an APM. And that's because the proximity of Denton Drive to our runways, we could not take, we just could not install a APM system and still meet safety grades coming in and out. So there was serious design issues, design feasibility issues for an APM system coming off of Denton. So alternate 11, we also decided not to move forward with alternative 11 because we could not accommodate an APM and still meet minimum design standards. So that left us with 5 alternates and the no-build alternative. The shortlisted alternative that we were supposed to present to Transportation Council this month, which now we will delay because of reasons I'll discuss later. So these 5 alternates, they all did good on the 4 major criteria that we had identified. And we're moving forward with these. Alternate 6 is the Shortlisted Drive Central Airfield, which basically is an entry point off of Shortlisted Drive, kind of in the middle of the airport. It has positive traffic impacts, positive VMT reductions. It can accommodate an APM system, and it provides a reliable alternate entry point. Now, when I say positive traffic impacts, we're looking at a regional level, and we're talking about reduction in traffic overall, reduction in congestion overall. We're not talking at micro level, at intersection level, or at the level of one particular street. Now, we all know if we introduce traffic on Shortlisted Drive will have increased traffic than it has today. But we haven't analyzed that to a point where we can tell you that what improvements that we will make to mitigate the increased traffic. So that will come in the next phase of analysis. But we're pretty confident based on our overall studies that we will be able to maintain or better the existing levels of service on these roads. The next alternative is the Northwest Highway Central Airfield alternative, which will include a bridge over Bachman Lake. Now, this alternative again has environmentally, it's good because it reduces VMTs, it reduces emissions, it has positive traffic impacts, it can accommodate an APM system, and it does provide an additional entry or exit point that's very reliable in case Harkeler Way and Mockingbird entrance is closed. Similarly, alternate 8 is another option in the very northwest corner of the airport along Shortlisted Drive in Denton, an entry point from there. Similarly, positive overall analysis results. Alternate 9 is at the northeast corner of the airport. Similarly, good traffic impacts, excellent VMT reductions. It can accommodate APM system, and additional entry, provides a reliable alternate entry. Alternate 10 is an entry point through George Coker Circle from Lemon Avenue. And this alternate also has excellent traffic impacts, VMT reduction, and it can integrate an APM, and it will provide a good alternate entry point for emergency needs. So overall, these 5 options on a regional level analysis and a high level analysis meets our criteria. They will be able to accommodate an APM system. They will not be impacted negatively if there's an incident on Mockingbird and Harkeler Way. They will reduce emissions and the vehicle miles traveled, and it'll have an overall positive traffic impact. Now, at this time, any option that we choose is bound to have some local impacts, which we will analyze in detail in our next phase, where we'll use microsimulation models to go into each intersection, each entry point, and conduct analysis. And whatever that analysis shows, if it shows that we need to add maybe a left turn lane or right turn lane, or what kind of mitigation measures we need to undertake, will be undertaken if that alternative is chosen. Again, our overall goal is to not only reduce emissions, we also want to make sure that we're not impacting existing roadways, existing intersections negatively. So we're committed to maintaining existing levels of service, and we're committed to either maintain or actually better levels of service. And we're committed to not having any negative impact on neighborhoods and residential streets. So that's what we're committed to. And every project we undertake, we will enhance the pedestrian and bicycle elements of the roadway. So I'll talk a little bit about the alternate entry survey one. Donetta, can you talk
Yes,
about it?
thanks, Aro. So we do want to discuss a little bit of our public input survey for the alternate entry analysis. So during our first meeting back in June is when we opened and announced the public input survey. So our purpose is in doing the survey is to gain your input on the analysis, to understand your considerations and understanding your modes and methods of travel, as well as just your priorities and other consideration factors. And this survey is open to anybody in the community, airport passengers, customers, even our tenants and employees who are commuting to the airport every single day. We do want to gain as much input as possible and hear your thoughts and ideas. So we've actually extended the survey out until the end of October. So there's still another month to do the survey, and it is online. You can go to the link shown in the screen for both English and Spanish, as well as if you look at the top of the screen, you can take the full survey online by clicking the button now during the presentation. But what we will also do tonight is we'd like to do just a shortened survey just to kind of gauge your thoughts and ideas of everyone who's on to that tonight and see what your thoughts are, and we'll share that feedback. But of course, there's more questions and options for additional input by doing a full survey. So if everyone's ready, we're going to ask you to put your answers into the screen. So let me just share the survey here. So you can go ahead and type your answers in. I'm going to kind of go over the questions. And while I'm doing that, feel free to go ahead and start answering now. Thank you. I see people are entering their answers already. So the first question in the survey is, what zip code do you live in? So we want to know, where do you live? You know, where are you commuting from to come to the airport? Are you someone who lives close to the airport, right in our community? Do you live farther in the more outside regional area, or are you maybe an employee or tenant of the airport and you're commuting there every single day? So if you can just type in your zip code, we'll get a better idea of where you're coming from and ask you some of your feedback and input. So question number 2, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, how often did you commute to and from Dallas Love Field? So not only, where you came from, but this is really getting after how often you're coming there. So again, you're coming there every single day. Maybe you're a contractor, employee, or somebody who's at the airport daily. Or maybe, you're a frequent traveler where you're coming every single week, around half the time every year. Or maybe just more of a frequent traveler, but maybe just like monthly, 12 to 24 times a year. Or just less frequently, maybe like quarterly or 4 to 6 times annually. Or maybe, just 1 or 2 trips per year. Or just maybe infrequent. Maybe you're just someone who lives near the community or near the area. You don't really go to the airport, but you're traveling in the vicinity quite often. Right, then moving on to question number 3. We're interested in knowing where you're traveling, when you're traveling, how or what mode of transportation do you normally use? So are you using a rideshare service like Uber or Lyft, or maybe a taxi, or even a rideshare van? Or do you use a rental car or public transportation? Or are you being dropped off or picked up by someone else, or even drive yourself and park at the airport? And then maybe you're walking or bicycling to the airport. So we're interested in knowing that. Then question number 4. If you do drive yourself, where do you park? So do you use our airport valet parking? Do you self-park maybe in garages A, B, or C? Or are you using off-airport parking? So you can enter your choices. Then on question number 5, from the list provided, we just want to know, what is your number 1 priority? So what is the, of the considerations, what is the most important to you? Is it environmental impacts, maybe air or water quality? Is it decreased traffic congestion? Is it increased public transit or mobility options? Or is it an impact to Bachman Lake Park or Trail? Are you most interested in increase in neighborhood traffic or in safety, making sure that there's some type of emergency evacuation or that terminal operations are able to operate, as well as first responders are able to have access in case of an emergency? Then question number 6. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, did you take alternate routes to avoid the intersection of Mockingbird Lane and Herb Keller Way, Cedar Springs Road? So if you were not going to the airport, did you avoid this area due to congestion? If so, just yes or no. And then the last question for tonight is, would you benefit through reduced travel time from an alternate entry to the airport? So, looking at all the different alternatives, do you think that there's an opportunity here where you could have reduced travel time if there was a second entrance to the airport? So while you're give you some additional time to continue to respond to the survey. So again, this is just a shortened version, just to get an idea of what your thoughts are, your considerations are for everyone who's joined our meeting tonight. Again, you can always click the link if you see the click here button on top, or the information that's been provided in the survey, or in the presentation. You can fill out the full survey that has a few more questions. It is very short. It only takes a minute or two to respond, but there are opportunities for you to add additional information where you can, have open fields to type in maybe some of your concerns or considerations that may not be listed in a specific question, but there's an opportunity for you to provide much more additional input. So while you guys are just finishing up here, we'll give you probably another 30 seconds to enter. If anybody wants to continue, let's continue on, and then we will share our survey results. So just want to make sure everyone's, looks like I don't see any more movement, so we're about done. I'm gonna just give you guys about 10 more seconds. Anyone else that still wants to answer our survey tonight, so we can get a quick idea of where we think our input is. Okay, we're going to be closing now in 5, 4, 3, 2, and thanks everybody for posting. I'm going to end the survey for tonight and show you the results. Don't forget, you can always do the full survey online to continue to add much more additional input. This is just a quick glance to see where your thoughts are tonight. Okay, let's see where we are. So, okay, from our results to now, it looks like we've had about 40% of people on the line tonight that actually joined. And we have a various array of input, so we'll dig more into the zip codes and where we're coming from. But in reference to the COVID-19 pandemic, prior to that, how often were people commuting? It looks like tonight, most of us are going, just a few times a year, quarterly, or, even weekly. So it looks like we have some frequent travelers who are online tonight. And then how they're getting to the airport. It looks like a lot of us are using ride shares or even driving ourselves mostly, or even having someone else drive it. So again, there's a lot of people who are using automobile transportation to get to the airport. And when we did drive ourselves, it looks like a lot of us are using our on airport parking. So those garages A, B, and C. And then from the list provided, we really wanted to get an idea of what you thought was most important to you in determining an alternate entry for Love Field. It looks like most of us are definitely concerned with decreasing the current traffic congestion, as well as, we are concerned with having great public transportation and mobility options. And then also our impacts to Bachman Lake, increase in neighborhood traffic and safety. And then in number 6, prior to the pandemic, were we taking alternate routes to avoid the main entrance of the airport? So it looks like not really. There are some people that do, but it's just a little more than half. And then our last question, do you think you might benefit through a second or alternate entry to the airport? Yes, it looks like 68% of people who responded tonight thinks that we might actually have a benefit to our second entrance. So that's just our kind of summary of input, just to get an idea of, the thoughts and considerations of everyone who's online tonight. Right now, in our actual survey that's still live again until October 31st online, I wanted to give you just an overview of what the thoughts are so far. And again, with that online survey, giving you much more opportunity to provide very detailed input and feedback. But we did a snapshot as of September 15th. And so far, we've gotten over 700 responses. So we do still have over a month until the end of October to continue to gain your input and hear your ideas. But across those 700 responses, the top 5 are coming from the areas you see highlighted in the map. So number 1 being our east side, and then 2 and 3 being just north of the airport. Number 4, people who are just south or southeast of the airport. And then number 5 are employees and tenants, people who are commuting to the airport every single day. And then again, with the online portion, you kind of see a little bit of ideas as far as how maybe people who are online tonight responded versus people who are responding throughout the full time of the survey. So when we asked about how often they were commuting, of those 700 responses, it looks like we do have a lot of daily, and that could be even, frequent travelers or tenants and contractors, as well as quarterly. So people who are frequent, but not, every week or every day. And then what modes they're using, it does look like, again, over half of the people who responded are driving themselves and parking right there on the airport. So you can kind of see some of the input, as well as, again, kind of using an automobile either through ride share or being dropped off by somebody else being the major methods to get to the airport. And then, we saw our responses for tonight, but during the current responses, they're kind of similar, where over half of the people thought that a second or alternate entry, they could see a benefit through reduced travel time. And from those responses, excuse me, the ranking of the priorities, we just asked about your number 1 priority tonight for a quick survey, but, having that detailed response in the full survey, we actually asked people to rank them. And so the number 1 priority, again, is decreased traffic congestion. Then the second would be environmental impacts, with a third being public transit or mobility options. And then 4th being an increase in neighborhood traffic is a concern. And then the 5th being a concern with impacts to Bachman Lake Park or Trail. And then the 6th one being safety consideration. So thanks again, everyone, for your input tonight, as well as continuing to give your full and more detailed responses and feedback in our full online survey. So don't forget that you can click the button on top of the screen, as well as we have our links here to our English and Spanish survey. And again, this information is provided in a flyer. If you click in the upper right-hand corner of tonight's presentation in the event board, you can download the flyer that has the link, and you can continue and do that on when you have time. Again, that survey will be open until October 31st. So Aro, can you provide us with our next steps?
Thank you, Danetta. Next steps. At the beginning of this presentation, I had mentioned public outreach and getting feedback from our customers, our neighbors, and the citizens of Dallas and our neighboring areas is very important. So we will continue the public outreach. We have extended the survey date, like Danetta said, to October 31st. So give more of you opportunities to take the survey and let us know what your priorities are. We were going to go to the Transportation Committee with basically this presentation that you see here, informing them of our recommendation to move forward with 5 of the options. But we have delayed that because something else has come up, which is a very good thing. In partnership with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, Texas Department of Transportation, various departments within the city of Dallas, and of course the area stakeholders. With COG taking the lead, they will be conducting a Bachman Lake area regional mobility plan. So that study will be a bottoms-up study. We will be talking to all affected parties, stakeholders, see how we can tie together all the different things that are going on in and around the Bachman Lake area. TxDOT will be looking at Northwest Highway and what to do about pedestrian safety and crossing issues there. We will have different departments, the park department from the city of Dallas, as well as public and urban development department, Department of Transportation. We'll have water department, DWU, and Force Aviation. So we'll look at all the different efforts that are going on and try to coordinate the efforts and take a holistic look at the traffic issues. The area that we'll look at through the study will be between Royal Lane and Mockingbird and Inwood and IH-35. So we'll look at the whole region, traffic and mobility issues within that whole region, as well as find ways to improve accessibility to Bachman Lake. Also the visibility of Bachman Lake, because it's easy to drive past it today unless you're on Shorecrest and not even know there's a nice park and a beautiful lake there. So all that effort will actually start very soon. It's going to start October 1st with a kickoff meeting, and there'll be town hall style meetings with the mayor of City of Dallas, or somebody from his office, or the city council, and the city council folks involved. So we will, this study will also have a subcommittee dedicated to the alternate entry to Love Field. So I look forward to that study and see what that study recommends, what kind of conclusions and what kind of analysis is done, and what kind of recommendations come out of that study. This is not to say that we will, that we will totally stop work on our alternate entry analysis. We will just tie up the loose ends that we have to date. So when we know which direction we want to take, once the Bachman Lake study is done, we can pick up and move forward. So that's basically our next steps. And then after the study is done and after we've had time to coordinate with the other efforts going on, and we will then go to council. So that's our the next 1 year. That's what we'll be looking at. And that's it for the alternate analysis. We do want you to give us feedback. There's various ways to get in touch with us. It can be on Facebook, it can be on Twitter. You could actually go on our website. Have any questions, you can always contact us. We also have the Good Neighbor meetings. We'll still be having them. They'll be virtual, but please participate in those and to get an idea and get information on all the different initiatives that the airport has, and all our projects. Will give you updates on all our projects there. You can contact us. I'll give you our director's number. It's 214-670-6077. And you can always email us or phone us or contact us through social media. So next we'll go to frequently asked questions. These are questions that we've received. We've received over almost close to 100 questions from citizens, and a lot of them are similar. So what we have done is we've tried to find questions that represent, in broad terms, the questions that, various questions that represent more than one question. But basically, these questions chosen will address, if not all, a majority of the questions being asked. So the question number one is consideration being given to how the alternate entry will affect adjacent neighborhoods, such as cut-through traffic? How will Shortlisted Drive or any other entry point impact the surrounding traffic? And like I had said before, definitely yes. Right now, though, our analysis is high level. We're concentrating on establishing reduction of VMT, reduction in emissions, and overall reduction in congestion. But once we have a preferred alternate that council recommends, we will do micro level analysis. We'll analyze all the impacts. If there is cut through traffic, we'll make sure that we take measures not to have cut through traffic through neighborhoods because of the alternate entry, a new entry point to the airport. And we'll work with the neighbors to identify mitigation measures and install them. But generally speaking, a lot of the traffic that we are talking about is already there. We are just shortening their trips because over 50% of our traffic comes from the north side. They have to drive along 11th Avenue or Denton or some other streets like Bluffview and go around the airport to enter the airport and come back up. So overall, there will be reduction in traffic if we do have an entry point anywhere but Mockingbird Lane. So what's the exact process and timeline to get the alternate entry approved? And is it possible to get a task force created at all? Who is the ultimate approver and how this goes? So that answer is very simple. The ultimate approver of all our projects, all the money that we spend, is the city council. Who creates a task force? That will also be a city council decision. And the process and the timeline, I just discussed briefly the timeline over the next 1 year when we'll be working with the COG and TxDOT and all the various stakeholders to take a holistic look at all the issues around Bachman Lake, our alternate entry, the congestions on the streets. And so the next 1 year, you'll see that process play out. And after that process is over and we have a good idea of how we need to proceed, we'll proceed and take our recommendations to council for their action. Question number 3, how can you potentially consider an elevated option at the north entrance across the public park and not do something on the south side because it's too high? So the question here relates to, I believe, 2 things. One is doing a flyover from Mockingbird to go to the airport, as also an APM system, the automated people mover system. If we try to build anything on Mockingbird, there are height restrictions that we need to follow, and it's and the reason for that is Mockingbird Lane and the north and the south end of our runways are pretty much at the same elevation, whereas on the north end at Bachman Lake is a low point, and our runways are 40 feet higher than the Bachman Lake. So we have more more freedom to build something without impacting the runway protection zone. Next question. Question 4, as alternate entry options are checked, please consider more than just options for cars. An alternate entrance can also mean an alternate drop-off, a place where people can move quickly and collect without cluttering an area. Keep in mind trains, bicycles, scooters, mass transit, etc. Very good point, and we definitely are looking at those. Like I said, the APM system is a mass transit system that definitely is part and parcel of choosing an option, that if we do not have the capacity to put in an automated people mover system in any of the options, that options is not being considered. Second thing, the airport field has been very proactive in allocating money for projects that improve pedestrian and bicycle elements in and around the airport. So we currently have advertised our entry road enhancement project, which will put in, this is on Herb Keller Way from Mockingbird, the Herb Keller Way loop. We will be putting in enhanced sidewalks, enhanced streetlights for safety, landscaping and streetscape elements, and public art elements on Herb Keller Way with this project. We currently have under design various projects, including the Lemon Avenue Streetscape project, where we'll be installing pedestrian and bicycle trails along Lemon Avenue to connect it to the existing Bachman Lake Trail. And that will have, in that project, we will improve the intersection safety. We'll, at the intersections, we'll put in new traffic signals, enhanced high visibility crosswalks, safety lighting, pedestrian refuge in the middle and the medians, and of course, a lot of streetscape and landscape elements, public art. So these projects we are undertaking because we're committed to alternate transport, as well as to improve the neighborhood and the quality of life. On the Lemon Avenue project, we're also working with DART to put in enhanced bus stops and bus shelters. So when that project is done, you'll see a big difference in how Lemon Avenue operates. It'll be more transit friendly. It'll be more pedestrian and bicycle friendly, and we'll actually have a trail that people can use to go to Bachman Lake Trail and beyond there. And when we do the alternate entry project, whichever option is chosen, we will be looking at these same elements. We'll take every opportunity to enhance and install pedestrian bicycle elements and other alternate transportation modes. Question 5, with the reduced traffic citywide, why is the project even needed? With the economic impacts and lower flight traffic from current pandemic, how is this a viable use of taxpayer dollars at this time? So I always love to say we don't use a dime from the taxpayers. The airport is self-funded, and all the funds that we have collect and spend is from passenger fares and other revenue sources that we have at the airport. Having said that, though, it's a good question why traffic is down, our passengers are down, passenger counts. So why even proceed with this study? So the simple answer is these are long-term projects. When we build an alternate entry, it's going to last for 50, 100 years. What we're going through now is a temporary dip because of a pandemic. You might have a recession where you have similar dips, but those are all temporary. When we do planning for major projects like this, we look at a 50-year horizon. So we fully expect, if not next year, the year after next, our passenger volumes to return, economic activity in the DFW area to go back to normal, and with that will come increased traffic on Mockingbird Lane, Harkeller Way. And remember, we still haven't reached our peak passenger capacity. So currently, and we were expecting to meet our maximum passenger capacity by 2024. Maybe we'll meet it in 2028. But this is also a long-term project. So by the time we actually have an alternate entry decision, and then we go through the environmental process, go through the outreach process, design it and build it, it'll probably be around that time that construction is completed. So at this time, we have some time because of the pandemic to keep planning for it, and then have it built before we run out of totally run out of capacity, and then we have to inconvenience our patrons as well as general public. Question 6. Has the airport performed detailed long-term studies on the environmental impact, traffic impact, noise impact, and the health safety impact for both Bachman Lake and the surrounding communities for each of the proposed new entrance options? Or does the airport study only very narrowly include traffic and environmental impact of the airport itself, at the exclusion of considerations for the impact on the park and surrounding neighborhood? So the short answer for that is our high-level study actually looks at overall reduction of VMT and emissions and congestion. And those parameters are not limited to the airport. So air quality is regional. If I reduce emissions around the airport, I also reduce congestion overall for the region. Same for vehicle miles traveled. They're not again limited to the airport because people travel on roads all over the city to get to the airport or get home from airport. So these are all regional and benefits. Congestion again is we might have congestion on Harkeller Way around our terminal, but what we are doing will actually improve traffic congestion on all the area roadways. So the answer is what we're doing is regional. It helps the surrounding, and it overall has positive impacts, environmental impacts. Question 7 is how much increased airport activity, takeoffs and landing is expected with the new additional entry? The answer is none, because our project, we are limited to 20 gates at the airport. And airport activity in terms of aircraft takeoffs and landings is basically based on supply and demand, not only of the commercial carriers, but also our FBOs, the private planes. So no impact, no correlation. So question number 8, why not consider a separate APM automated people mover system from Burbank Station? So that is a standalone option that was actually studied in 2011. And the conclusion was that it didn't make uh, sense economically. It wasn't a financially viable option, a standalone APM system. And then, of course, we did look at the design parameters in conjunction with the entry off of Denton Drive. And we realized that we couldn't make the grades, safe grades for an APM if we came that way. So even with, in conjunction with Western entry, the APM wouldn't work from that side. Community question number 1. What's the basis for the conclusion that there is a traffic congestion problem at Love Field and that adding a second entrance would alleviate the problem? So that is basically when we did our master plan update, professionals studied the current traffic situation at that intersection and determined that the traffic congestion issues needs to be addressed. We've seen it firsthand when we, but to the point, I mean, we have professionals who are doing the traffic analysis. We follow not international, but US DOT standards, internationally recognized standards of evaluating congestion, evaluating traffic, evaluating levels of service at intersections. So we follow what's the MUTCD, which is the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is the standard for the entire United States and is also followed in Canada and a few other countries as the standard reference book for these kind of analysis. And all the analysis that we have conducted based on collecting traffic volumes, projections based on historical traffic volume increases, and then analysis for the intersections and the roadways point very clearly to a congested intersection. Next question. I use Mockingbird Lane often, but do not run into congestion. What are these issues of sitting through the light at Herb Keller Way daily? Well, we have our peak periods, morning peak periods between 7:15 and 8:15 a.m., midway peak between 12:30 and 1:30 p.m., 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. in the evening. Those are the peak hours, and I can attest. I used to go home that way till I stopped going through Herb Keller Way and Mockingbird because I had to sit through 2-3 cycles, just going straight, not even trying to turn left to the airport. So, I can personally attest to the congestion at that intersection. Community question number 3. Have there been any objective traffic studies performed to support shortlisted alternative? If so, how did those studies deal with the issue of induced demand? So again, I mean, we haven't looked at very detailed traffic analysis, which take a lot of time, take a lot of effort, and a lot of money. We will do that when we have a preferred alternate. But like I've explained, we are looking at overall benefits. We are looking at net reduction in traffic volume and vehicle miles traveled. We're looking at net reduction in emissions, and we're looking at net reduction in congestion. So all the alternates that we are proposing to move forward with meet those three criteria. Community question number 4. What are the properties, addresses of the north side of Northwest Highway that will be affected? So we don't have a design yet. When we do, we will know for sure. But our effort will be to minimize any impacts. Our impacts will be minimal. We'll try to work within existing right-of-way as much as possible. And since we don't have a preferred alternate and we don't have a design, it's hard to answer that question. Community question number 5. Does this also include construction of a walk-back trail along Lemon Avenue? If so, when is the construction going to start? So we are definitely designing the walk-back trail along Lemon Avenue with the Lemon Avenue Streetscape Improvement Project. It's not part of this project, though. That's a separate standalone project. And we are at about 30% design for that project. We expect to have 100% design around spring of next year. We'll be done with that design. When we go to construction, it will depend on what the economic situation is. We really took it to the limits on this project. We didn't. We have all the bells and whistles. We have neighborhood parks. We have really enhanced sidewalks. We have enhanced street lights, intersection improvements, public art, landscaping. So it's a quite expensive project. And even though we were hoping we could start next year, we'll have to wait and see what the economic situation is. I'm hoping we'll have enough money to start construction as soon as design's done. But can't promise right now. We'll just have to see how our revenues are, whether our revenues are picking up or not. But our design effort will continue for that project. Question 6, community question 6 is, what is the status of consolidated rental car facility? So that study is on hold today. As of today, we probably will wait to see what council recommendation is for the alternate entry project before we pick that study back up. Or we might actually pick it up if the demand grows. Right now, we don't see a great demand for a consolidated rental car facility. So to be determined in the future. And Netta, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Aro. So, excuse me, before we begin the Q&A session, just wanted to let everybody know that the questions that you guys have been submitting all during tonight's presentation, we've posted in the chat so you can see what's coming up. And if maybe a question that you had is already in the queue to be answered. And if for some reason we have too many questions to respond tonight, we will continue to update our frequently asked questions document that is located on our webpage on the Dallas Love Field website under the airport projects. So just a reminder, if you do still have questions, again, you can post them in the chat. And if you click the blue question mark, it goes directly into our Q&A. So without further ado, let's go ahead and answer some of your questions that you had this evening.
All right, VMTs and emergency access are such an issue. Why don't you install protected BRT lanes that emergency vehicles can access? Bus rapid transit lanes that emergency vehicles can access. I do not understand that question a lot. If we put in BRT lanes, that would have to be new design, expanding either Mockingbird or expanding Lemon Avenue or Denton Avenue. Uh, and then once they do get into the secured airport area by the runways, not everyone can go through there. I mean, only public access roads need to be. We need public access roads because regular, Dallas police and fire are not authorized in the what we call the AOA area, which is the authorized, aircraft operations area. They have to be specially trained. So, DPD units within the airport that work exclusively for the airport are trained. So are the ARF stations, the aircraft rescue and firefighting station that we have, and the firemen there are trained. But others are not trained and are not permitted to drive in an active runway area. So any access that we have needs to be to a public road. Question 2, is the city of Dallas and Love Field looking at more viable options for direct dark rail connections with the terminal for the ease of its visitors, or is it only considering handicapping its capacity of moving people in and out of the airport with car infrastructure? So the answer is yes, we're looking at alternate uh, transportation modes, and the APM system that I talked about is definitely a critical element of the alternate entry study. Question 3, why not create a second entrance on Lemon Avenue and stay away from Bachman Lake where families gather? Good point. And we do have alternate that takes access off of Lemon Avenue through the George Coker Circle. And we have shortlisted that alternate for additional analysis. What is the approximate cost of each of the proposed new alternate entryways? We don't know yet, because right now we are still at a planning stage, very high level analysis of the key points that key criteria that we wanted to meet. So next stage we will be looking at detailed traffic impacts at the intersections and the entry points of the 5 alternates. We'll also be looking at high level planning level cost estimate for each of these alternates, because any alternate that we choose has to make economic sense. It has to be financially viable. And we will, perform what's called a benefit cost analysis for each alternate, but the benefits have to outweigh the cost. It's at that time that we'll know more of the, rough order of magnitude costs for each of these alternates. What are the projections of traffic entering Love Field after adjustments for the dramatic reductions in air travel due to coronavirus pandemic? So we know our passenger count is down probably about 65%, but that doesn't mean that our traffic volume's down that much. Generally speaking, what we are noticing is traffic on roadways and freeways are probably down from 100% before COVID to maybe around 75 or 80%, maybe a little less. Like Hercular Way might be more around 60%. So, but we haven't done any before and after study during COVID to be able to give you an exact number. So what activity exactly is the airport pausing with respect to the down select options when it announced that it would wait until COG does its study? So we, instead of going to transportation committee and with the options that we presented today, We are going to wait and see if there's anything else that comes out of that study. We're also going to see what the overall consensus is in pushing forward any of these alternatives. Um, what really we need to do is we need to see what everyone else is doing, what, to see what the recommendations of that study are. I mean, our effort so far has been mostly technical. So we are solid on our technical basis. We know our options will reduce VMTs, it'll reduce congestion, it'll reduce air quality, emissions, and improve air quality. So, but we are pausing moving forward with asking Transportation Committee to give us a recommendation or going to council with a recommended option. Till that study is done, so we have a more comprehensive view of what all the other projects, all the other plans, all the other efforts that are going in, and come up with an option that is in sync with what's going on around the airport in Bachman Lake. Aren't you pausing the study awaiting the Cox study as reported in the Dallas Morning News? Will you now be reevaluating all 11 options, or are you continuing to study just the 5 north entrance options? So right now, I mean, because of the reasons that I stated, are we're just looking at 5 options. But again, I don't know what the results of the Cox study will be. So we'll have to wait and see what the recommendations are of the study, and then we will will coordinate with that study to move forward. Passenger traffic is predicted to stay low and even decrease given work at home. Plus, the new Dallas-Houston fast train approved. Is this being taken into account? We haven't seen any analysis which shows how many passengers this the Dallas-Houston bullet train will take from our airport, but we do know that come 2028, our capacity, what the limiting factor for our airport is the capacity of our 28 capacity. We know the demand is going to be higher. And typically when the DART trains were, DART lines were put in, the train started operating, it only took away 5% of the traffic. And that traffic has, increased back to previous levels and then some. So even with the Dallas-Houston fast train, I don't see a long-term impact on the passenger volumes at Love Field. Why do you keep repeating? All of the journal info has been presented. Why are you not making any progress? Very good question. So we these public information meetings are for people. We want to reach as many people as possible. So it is repetition is the same, pretty much the same presentation, but different questions, additional questions. That's because we wanted to make sure people who didn't catch the first one of our presentation caught the second one, and so forth. So if you've been watching all these presentations, and you're right, Mr. Adams, that they are basically the same. So we wanted to make sure we update everyone on where we are and how much progress we are making. We are at a point where we need direction from Transportation Council to go to the next step. So since that hasn't happened, our efforts now will be to work with the COG on their study, provide input, provide data, and work with them to come up, be part of the team that will be developing the recommendations. The only traffic statistics provided related to the actual intersection of Mockingbird HKW. The traffic data of HKW is merely anecdotal, i.e. long backups of it. Given that the traffic issue would appear to be related to the Mockingbird Hercules Way intersection rather than Hercules Way itself, isn't the simpler solution to fix the intersection rather than build a second entrance? Again, it's a capacity issue. 80,000 cars at an intersection is is higher than freeway traffic in many of the smaller states. So it's, the improve, we did look at this in our master plan update, and the only way to make it work was to separate the intersection. And due to the various reasons we really can't dig, dig up that intersection and keep the airport running. So that's our biggest issue. What airport in the US has a comparable APM implemented today? What do you that you expect would need to be built? Covered, length, weather capable, elevation. We really haven't gotten into all of that design elements and details. All we've looked at is whether we can accommodate an APM, a critical design, where critical design elements can be met. Length, and depending on which entry point council directs us to proceed with, the length and expected covered or elevations will depend on that. So it's we're still just preliminarily looking at whether if we were directed to put an APM system in, could we accommodate it? And the answer is yes for the 5 shortlisted alternates. Are airlines and other business interests advising you, or can you tell us who is on your selection committees? So the question is, I don't understand what selection committee means. We have a technical committee that looks at the technical details, which we go present to council committees, and get your feedback and get council feedback. So what we are analyzing was stated in our master plan update that was adopted by council. Integration of the APM system was also at council direction, and the criteria that we are using to analyze the various options: reduction in VMT, reduction in emissions, APM integration, etc. Those were all presented to council and approved by the transportation committee. So that's basically how we are proceeding. The problem is not the streets leading to Love Field. The problem is that Hercules Way is too small for traffic to go to the terminal. Well, Hercules Way does have about 28,000 cars a day. Mockingbird Lane has 52,000 cars. So overall, we do have a lot of cars. I'm hoping that our alternate entry takes some of that congestion away from the Mockingbird Hercules Way area, that intersection. But then if you look at the success of Love Field, the rapid growth in traffic volume we've had is because of the rapid growth in passenger volume that we have in our airport activities. So it's actually overall. It's not just Hercules Way. We have very high traffic volumes on Lemon Avenue. Lemon Avenue has certain portions of Lemon Avenue has 45,000 cars a day close to the airport. Northwest Highway, that also has around 45,000 cars in the vicinity of Bachman Lake. If you go west from there, probably is a little less. East is probably a little higher. But all these streets, Mockingbird, Lemon, and Northwest Highway, they're all high volume streets. Isn't the impact of Bachman Lake Trail Park also a concern about the significant environmental impacts to the lake, soil, air, and to the children who play there, families who gather there, and those who enjoy the park and exercise there? Very true. All of them are true, and we're very aware of that. Now, uh, depending on which alternate council picks, impacts will vary to Bachman Lake. But now, being an engineer, I can tell you that when we touch things, it'll be better. We don't look at it as a negative zero-sum game. When we undertake a project, we take the opportunity to actually enhance these elements that you talk about. Uh, any project, any of the options that we is chosen will actually give us the opportunity to introduce more bicycle trails, more pedestrian pathways, more uh, design elements that we can incorporate in our design to enhance the pedestrian and bicycle experience and the experience uh, of the people who visit the park. Even if the Northwest Highway option, even with the Northwest Highway option, which is a bridge, and uh, we can improve the pedestrian crossing elements and the bicycle crossing elements along Northwest Highway. And we always have an opportunity through our design efforts and in conjunction with the public to introduce elements and enhance the whole experience uh, when we undertake these projects. So I'm actually very optimistic, no matter which option council chooses, and we'll get an opportunity to work with all the stakeholders and be able to uh, have a project with actually enhanced elements of basically quality of life elements. Who do you define as the affected neighborhoods? Is there a list? We have reached out through our GNP efforts to all the neighborhoods in our vicinity, all around the airport. But then for the alternate entry, our what we do actually affects everyone to a point. More so, the closer you are, you'll either be negatively affected or you'll be positively affected. But the affected neighborhoods, once we get into when we see affected, there is a lot of ways you can get affected. If you're someone who's trying to get to the airport and we shorten your drive, that will be a positive effect. If you're someone who lives close to an entry point, you might be negatively impacted, but then we'll work to to mitigate those effects and make sure that we maintain the existing levels of service. So any impacted neighborhood, if you see cut through traffic, or if you see increase in traffic, we will mitigate it. If there's cut through traffic, we'll take measures to discourage people from going through the neighborhood. So if you live closer to Love Field, you will be affected to a certain degree. Even if you stay, maybe 2 miles away from us, you might be affected in certain ways. So depending on which alternate we choose, we'll do pretty detailed macro level traffic analysis to see the impacts, how far the impacts go in terms of congestion, in terms of increased traffic, and mitigate those. But remember, overall, we will be reducing traffic. Overall, we will be reducing emissions. Is the only reason an entrance from Denton Drive not feasible because of the rate needed for an APM? Without that requirement, it would be used for vehicles. So the answer is barely. And when we looked at the design element for a roadway, if we had to take a truck that needed to make the grade, it's very steep. I mean, you know, it's a couple of degrees higher than what most most designs for this kind of roadway would require. So, and especially given the icy conditions we have in Dallas, uh, steeper grades are not recommended. If you're considering 50-year horizon for traffic, how do you view autonomous vehicles and their impacts? So the 50-year horizon for traffic is not what our project is good for 50 or 100 years. But this analysis that we have conducted is for airport related traffic only. We haven't conducted a study. Well, our study does look at traffic around us and look at how the traffic will increase in the surrounding roadways. But the analysis was based on traffic volumes related to the airport only. So the reduction in all the reductions in VMT, all the reductions in emissions that we mentioned are for airport related traffic only, because that's what we can control. And so, like I had said, our projections are by 2028, we will be maxed out. So we will probably not add any more traffic to our terminal since we'll be maxed out. So our benefits that we have seen and that we have analyzed are based on 2028 passenger volumes, which will be our maxed out conditions. Now, can traffic increase more after that? If it does, the benefits will be higher, but we have not looked at that. As far as autonomous vehicles and their impact, we haven't conducted, that kind of analysis, detailed analysis will be done when we look at the feasibility of an APM system. Affected neighborhoods, what about quality of life? It's not just about traffic. The largely affected neighborhoods north of Northwest Highway are often neglected and ignored. So I can answer to the question about neglected and ignored, but I can tell you that all the projects that aviation is doing are quality of life improvements. I just mentioned the Lemon Avenue project. The Lemon Avenue project will actually be installing a neighborhood park north of Northwest Highway, across from a parcel that we own, that we use, that's used for airport use. So we'll actually be putting in neighborhood park there. And if council does choose an option that impacts Northwest Highway, every project we do will enhance the quality of life elements of our design. We also have another project called the Luffy Loop Trail project, where we're working with the National Park Services to improve quality of life by installing pedestrian and bicycle trails. And that study is also undergoing right now. They might be reaching out to you for feedback. So if you do get a call from them, or if you already received a call from them, please make sure to answer and provide them feedback. With that, I would like to thank you for attending this meeting. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us or connect with us through various social medias. And do spread the word, and do ask people to take the survey. If you haven't taken our survey, please take our survey, and please spread the word about our survey. And thank you so much for attending our fourth alternate entry